Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and Nancy Pelosi remarking upon the departure of Elizabeth Warren from the race yesterday, leaving two white men of the silent generation as the choice for the party of diversity, all the identitarians. Nancy Pelosi is, she's borderline outraged.
But I do think there's a certain element of misogyny that is there, and some of it isn't really mean-spirited. It just isn't their experience. Many of them will tell you they had a strong mom, they have strong sisters, they have strong daughters, but they have their own insecurities.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're you ladies out there, Amy, tell your friends.
Yeah.
If you're tired of the amiable misogyny of the Democrats, come on over. We'll welcome
that's
you.
right. Well, what will the women of Warren do now?
To the women and girls who feel like we're left with two white men to decide between.
I know. One of the hardest parts of this is all those baby promises and all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
I think our next guest may have a competing message to those young ladies. She is Dana Loesch. She's the host of the nationally syndicated The Dana Show, regular contributor to Fox News, former spokeswoman for the NRA. She has a new book. It's called Grace Canceled, How Outrage is Destroying Lives, Ending Debate, and Endangering Democracy. Dana, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. So what are we to do collectively to deal with the misogyny in the Democratic primary electorate that Nancy Pelosi was addressing?
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised that it's a party of sexism. I mean, isn't that ultimately what we're discussing here? It's that it's a sexist ideology, sexist belief system. No, honestly, I was listening to some of these excuses that were given out by some of these pundits and political operatives last night, and there were a few of them who had said, well, it's just, I mean, they were verified, the Blue Checkmark Brigade on Twitter, that were actually saying it's so sad, and yes, I'm shedding tears over this, that Elizabeth, they act like Tulsi Gabbard's not in the race anymore. I guess if they're so sad that a woman is not ascending to the ticket, that are they going to rally around Tulsi Gabbard? Or how about maybe if she didn't make it, how about people just, I don't know, maybe increase their standards and nominate an actual qualified, just individual, period. And if it happens to be a woman, so be it. I think it's insulting to women, the way that they put this.
Well, Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian agent, though, we understand from Hillary,
right.
so they can't nominate her.
She has one delegate.
But, yeah, you're right. Isn't it interesting? The identitarian politics of the left is really, you see it sort of group by group. They remove agency from people. They do it with black voters. They do it with women. You're at the same time to be empowered and elevated, but you're also a victim. You can do nothing without the white liberal man, basically.
Well, that's it entirely, and they've marketed themselves this way. I think the left for so long, the Democrat Party in particular, has wanted to sort of put a patent on all of these different identity boxes, whether you can't be authentically female, you can't be authentically gay, you can't be authentically Hispanic, you can't be authentically anything unless you're also a Democrat, because they've conflated people with issues. And really, I mean, I think in some regard, when you do that, you lose a sense of humanity. And that's what we're seeing with this party. And the fact that so many people, I was just watching the way that they were reacting, and it was amusing, but also at the same time, it's just incredibly sad that this is what politics is now just evolved to.
Well, I want to get to your book, too, because you're not authentically a mom or a woman or a wife either, because you were the spokeswoman for the NRA in addition to being a conservative talk show host and so forth. And you recount, there's an excerpt from your book that I read about how you were treated and how the media sort of set you up with this town hall you participated in after the horrific shooting at the high school, the Parkland High School. And I just wanted you to recount that, too, in terms of the approach the media takes and the left takes to try and dehumanize people with whom they disagree.
Well, yeah, I mean, I talk about this in the book, and in the chapter on the media's role in it. The town hall at this point, which wasn't really so much a town hall as it was, I mean, the only other way to describe it is a public lynching, and that might make some people flinch. But, if you haven't been on stage while you have an arena of people screaming at you, and cursing at you and even saying burn her, which they did. And when media denied it, I posted 4 separate videos on which are still available on YouTube and Twitter showing this. Then maybe perhaps they can't judge if they haven't been in that position. I felt so bad for the families because there were a lot of people who were not even members of that community who ended up going to that event for some reason. I guess they wanted to be a part of it, but it made it a lot more difficult for actual grieving families. And that's, when I went in there and I was sitting on that stage and I was looking at their faces and the cameras zooming in on them very exploitatively, that bothered me. But that happened on a Wednesday, and I was told that I was going to go down there on a Tuesday. I was told that I was going to be on stage during the flight, and then I didn't realize that I was going to be even saying anything on stage until we had gotten down there on that Wednesday. And it was a little crazy. I wrote in the book, I'm like, I spent the entire flight down there in prayer because, I'm a brawler, and that's, how I've always been politically, but that's not what this situation calls for.
Right.
And when I got there, I think I had been the calmest that I'd ever been in my life. And I introduced myself to Scott Israel because I wanted to take his temperature. I just sensed, I knew that CNN was going to pit me up against him, which they did. But one thing that people don't really realize is that they had a political rally before the town hall actually started on television. For about an hour and a half, they had politicians get up there and make stump speeches, and Scott Israel got up there and started going off on me and other individuals. So that's one of the reasons why it was so amped up when the cameras started rolling, because they had a political rally beforehand. And I told my husband, I said, no matter what happens, you can't do anything, because he went with me. I said, if somebody throws a punch, you can't do anything. If somebody spits on me, you cannot do anything. And I told him, I said, you need to restrain yourself. And that was hard for him to watch. And he had to sit next to Ted Deutsch, of all people. Yeah. And on the stage, it was because Jake Tapper had told me beforehand that he lost control of the room. And when we were sitting on the stage, there were people there who were just in so much pain. I don't even think they realized they were there, but the cameras did. And that's one of the things that made me so angry. And the next morning, I had to leave that night right after the town hall and go to CPAC. And I maybe got like 3 hours of sleep. The VP was speaking that morning, and with Secret Service, you have to be down really early. And as I was on stage at CPAC, I saw the CNN cameras in the back, and it made me think of them zooming in on the faces of these crying families as they were reading statements or doing anything. And I just thought how exploitative it was what they did at that town hall and how they really were doing everything they can to drive divide.
Well, right, that sort of human suffering is just a means to political ends for them. That's how craven it is, and also stilted, right? Because one of the families that lost a daughter at Parkland was Andrew Pollock's family. We've talked to him on this show, and he has very different views about what should be done in the wake of that massacre with respect to people's gun rights than some of the other families. And it's fine to have different views on the topic, but Andrew Pollock's pain and his views are given no quarter because they don't fit a prepackaged narrative that CNN wants, and CNN and other outlets want to promote, and that seems to me quite shameless as well.
No, it is, and Andy has become a really good friend of my family, his family, and Ryan Petty as well. And he told me later on, he and Ryan Petty did not go to that event. They said, we did not go to that town hall. We did not want to be a part of it. And this was especially after, and folks may not remember, Andy was the dad who, when he got news of what had happened at Parkland, he was in a Trump shirt. He happened to be in a Trump shirt, and he showed up to the school. And there was all of these pictures taken of him by the media of him wearing a Trump shirt in his truck, and he got a lot of hate. This is a dad who was waiting to find out if his daughter was alive, and he's already getting hated on in the media because he was wearing a Trump shirt. So he had no interest in going to that town hall. He told me later.
And they try to associate the crazy gunman who is just a monster, should never have the guns in the first place. They try to associate him with President Trump, which was so outrageous.
Yes, and what people don't realize, and this is what makes me so angry about this today, is that this individual had actually threatened to kill his classmates before and had already pulled a gun on a classmate.
Right.
He beat his mother to the point where her teeth fell out of her head. There were so many calls into him, and the digital death threats that he had sent. He actually, and there were a number of Florida prosecutors who were interviewed on this. I would think it was the Sun Sentinel, that said that they don't know why Scott Israel and the Broward police at that point did not arrest him. They had everything necessary to go in and arrest him, and they would have made him a prohibited possessor. He would have been in custody, and he would have been able to purchase the rifle he purchased.
In lieu of being able to offer much in the way of criticism of the economy under President Trump, the coronavirus episode notwithstanding, do you see issues like gun control, gun confiscation as an issue that, say, a Joe Biden is going to try to use to prosecute his case in the suburbs and move people to him, make the gun issue sort of a proxy issue for the general election?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think that's what so many of these candidates pivot to, particularly when they can't really compete economically. And so long as the economy is strong and the president makes good decisions, it's going to be really, really tough to push him off of that incumbent perch. And so one of the things, and I think we saw a little bit of this already when they were in, which I thought was interesting. They were at Gillies in Dallas, and Gillies it's a Western themed bar. They used to have a mechanical bull in there. They also had a sign in the front that said that licensed carries welcome there. So they were probably at Gillies where there were a bunch of law-abiding people armed, and nothing happened. But he has Beto O'Rourke, who I kind of facetiously refer to as the furry elf from El Paso, who I guess is going to be his gun control czar at this point. And this guy's famously told all of America that, yes, he's going to come take our AR-15s, and he's going to come and take, and he uses that as just a substitute for all semi-automatic rifles. I mean, when you break it down, that's what they're going after. They're not just going after, the most commonly owned a semi-automatic rifle, and they've never explained why an AR-15 is bad, but a 30-06 is okay, or a 308 is okay. They've never explained any of this. But they're talking about going after all semi-auto, and he also suggested criminal penalties for people who don't participate in confiscation, and that's a real problem. And for Joe Biden to lift him up and say he's going to work with me on this, Joe's going to have to simultaneously be in the middle on some things, but he's going to go far, far left where it concerns gun control. And that's one thing that the president will need to watch going into this re-election period.
Yeah, and if that Bloomberg town hall before his departure on Fox, Bloomberg town hall on Fox before his departure is any indication, there are going to be some gun rights folks that are extra motivated to get out and rally their friends, too. She is Dana Loesch, host of the nationally syndicated The Dana Show, regular contributor to Fox, former spokeswoman for the NRA. The book, Grace Canceled, How Outrage is Destroying Lives, Ending Debate, and Endangering Democracy. Dana, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great weekend, guys.
You too.
You too. Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Hello, I'm Dr. Willie Wilson, and it's time for reparations. Reparations for the black communities are bigger than a single check. Reparations are an opportunity to repair the results from the African enslavement, the redlining, the war on drugs, police terror, and continued discrimination. It is time for an investment as target as the policies that create our divide.